Woohoo!
Yay!
We have got a great show for you today. We are going to be talking about the Cyrano de Bergerac tropes and the goods, the bads, all of the in between, the missed opportunities, everything you could possibly want, whether you're into the Cyrano de Bergerac story or you're just trying to continue honing your writing skills. We're just going to have a good time anyway, honestly. Because, like, is there any character who does not embody millennial angst more than Cyrano? I'm really not sure that there is. Like, let alone a not new character.
Yeah.
The real, what was it? Savion Cyrano de Bergerac lived in the mid 1600s, France, and Edmond Rostand or Rost something.
Yeah, you got it right.
He was kind of fascinated as a boy by this character, by this person. He wasn't a character; he was a real person. And what little is known, because pretty much almost all of what we know about this person is in like the foreword to a book that was not about him or about anything about him. Is essentially like his friend was like, hey, so I got into this whole historical thing because, and this relates to this friend of mine who is dead. So, here you go. Like, what a great way to write an intro in late 1600s France. And just based on that, Edmond was fascinated as a boy and like kind of fantasized about this character, this person, and made him into a character. And I think really was sort of answering the why do some men marry and some men don't, particularly men who seem to be quite promising. When they've got it all, you know, they've got a glittery military career, they are fine swordsmen, they are romantic as hell, and yet they don't marry. Now, in reality, more than likely, the reason Cyrano did not marry is a tale as old as time, the gays. But we, of course, even in Victorian times, could not talk about that. So instead, Edmond created a fantasy about what could be the other reasons. And the answer is incels are forever. They are not new. And so here we are. We're going to discuss it. We're going to have a great time. I hope you'll stick around. And to help me do this, there is the fantastic, the talented, the very snarky and sassy, my brother Tom. And then the person who requested this to start with because she adored it and also want to tear it apart, Megan.
Yay!
Welcome, welcome.
Glad to be here.
I mean, really, watching this, it was just a... Why does no one talk about in modern times that Cyrano is an incel?
Yeah, that was actually kind of interesting for me.
Like the definition of one.
Yeah, he is textbook before there was a textbook, which really just shows me incels are forever. Everybody thinks they're modern and people talk about them like they're a new thing. They are obviously not a new thing. And that's really kind of interesting. But also, like, I think the reason they're not a new thing is because, like you talked about, there is this idea of romantic love and it's frankly quite toxic.
Yeah.
Which is not the same as, like, true romance or, say, the romance hopefully one has in a committed relationship. But instead, this idealized idea of romantic love, of romantic living, that is actually quite toxic. And that there are obviously some people who subscribe so hard to this that they find themselves, you know, to be what we now call incels, involuntarily celibate. They want to do it. They want to bang it out. But their personality is so off-putting. No. Hello, Jenna.
Hello.
But yeah, like I mean, when I first encountered the story when I was a kid and a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
I'd only ever heard this in reference to, courtly love and Arthurian legends and, heroic tropes. And this whole self-flagellation, denial of pleasures stuff.
I will admit that when I asked our parents about what is courtly love, and the whole Arthurian, thing, what is it? My mother said it's a way to cheat without cheating. That is what she said. Now, in fair warning, I am demi-romantic, which definitely means not only does it take me quite a, I have to be friends with someone before there's any possibility I could feel romantic about them. But that even when I do feel romantic about a romantic partner, I am not into the same kinds of romance. Like, just bringing me a bouquet of flowers is not going to impress me. Like, I too can go fetch flowers outside. Who gives a care? Or just here, have chocolates. Like, again, I'm not like, oh, you must genuinely love me. Like, no, it's chocolates. You buy them and then you go, here, a little treat. It doesn't mean we're now going to get married. Versus I do know other like neurotypical people, heterosexuals, who are like, you bring them chocolates and flowers 6 times and they're like, where's the ring? Let's make this happen. Like, so even again, like, I'm slow to romance, and then I'm definitely have a much a lower, I have a much higher standard of what is romance versus neurotypical heterosexuals. Exactly. Like show me how you really feel about me. Show me your true affection. Like, not just but yes, no, I know heterosexuals who are like, you get them 6 bouquets of flowers over like 6 weeks, and they're like, so when are we getting engaged? And that is a real experience I had once, by the way. Not personally, because I did not buy this person 6 bouquets of flowers in 6 weeks, but I was friends with them in college and was there before they started dating the person. And 6 weeks in, she's like, so pretty sure he's going to be bringing out a ring soon. And I'm like, but you just met. I mean, he seems nice. And I don't even get a serial killer vibe off of him. So that's cool. But you've only been dating 6 weeks. Just, yeah, but he's brought me 6 bouquets of flowers and 6 boxes of chocolates. So we're definitely getting engaged. And I'm like, ma'am, you need to pump the forces there. Because they're running a little too ragged. Okay, so anyway, so I have learned I am not like other people in that. So fair warning. And there must be a genetic component, because both of my parents were also like not that into little romantic gestures must mean big things. To them, both of our parents, little romantic gestures meant little things. Like, it's just, you just bring flowers home when you see, like, in our family, if you see a beautiful bouquet of flowers at a very nice price, you bring them home. That's what it means. It means I saw a beautiful bouquet of flowers. I have brought it for us to live with till they die. That is what it means. And it means nothing more, and it means nothing less. It means, hi, I've tried to bring something beautiful in the home. It's temporary. Don't get attached. That's what it means. Exactly. She could buy herself flowers. You get it, Diane.
And just the whole, what these show is that while I was out, I was still thinking about you.
Right, which, yeah, you should. If you're in a long-term relationship with somebody, you should be thinking about the person you live with. Wow, that is fast, ma'am.
That's like Vegas fast.
Yeah, like, dang. Was it a good relationship? I hope so. Sometimes you just, when you know, though. Sometimes when you know, that's awesome. That's really, I'm so glad they found that they fit well together. But yeah, when you know, you know. But again, it's just flowers. It's just flowers. It doesn't mean anything beyond these will die soon. Don't get attached. Oh, by the way, that is something my ex-husband absolutely hated about me when we were married. We were married 11 years. And he's just like, you're just not impressed with flowers. And I'm like, it's not like you grew them yourself. You know, you're not like, you didn't plant them going, Glory loves these. I'm going to plant them and I'm going to nurture them for months. And then at the peak, when they're just absolutely at their full glory, I'm going to cut them and I'm going to bring them inside and go, here, I have arranged this for you to gaze upon and know my feelings are true. And instead, he's just like plunking down $10 at Walmart and he thinks I'm supposed to be impressed. Yep, when you know, you know.
But I mean, if there's one thing I have learned over the decades, because I have been around for lots of people figuring out if they want to get married and then discussing with a lot of people they knew, including, you know, the parents, about understanding if they wanted to get married and what was needed in a marriage. And, you know, essentially the psychologists have come out all saying the same thing as well, which is you have to have the same wants and you have to want to keep growing together. That's it. But marriages only last as long as you want to keep both growing the same way.
And it's also, I think you need to want to be around that other person.
Yes.
Like, sometimes you want them to grow, but you don't want to be around. I'm not speaking about any of my exes. That's totally fine.
Or family members in general.
Yeah. In fairness, our parents, our father literally proposed on the first date. So again, but he didn't do it at the start of the date. Just in fairness, like both of these people are dead. But let me just tell you about mine and Tom's parents. Okay. So there they were. It was the blockbuster of Star Wars summer. And Dad asked Mom out. He had already been rejected for marriage by 5 different women. Mom was the 6th. He was looking to get married and have kids. He knew it. Everyone knew it in the community. It was happening. And he asked her out. She was like, okay, because he asked her to Star Wars. She's like, sure, I haven't seen it. Dad had seen it 4 times. And can you tell both of her parents were neurodivergent? And it was a 2-hour line in Ann Arbor to go see Star Wars. Even if you'd already bought tickets, it didn't matter. It was still 2 hours, is what he said. Because I'm like, why didn't you buy tickets ahead of time? And he's like, number 1, they did not used to sell them ahead like that. And number 2, the line would have been the same. Because, like, there was a line all day, even during the day, to go into the theater. Like, it was truly a blockbuster of a movie. So they got in line and they chatted for 2 hours. They then watched the movie. They loved the movie so much. Mom said, I could definitely watch that again. And he's like, you want to get back in line? And she said, sure. So they got back in for the last showing line. And it was in that line. So what is that? 4.5 hours into the date? He's like, hey, we're really getting along and vibing. Well, he didn't say vibing. It was the 70s, though. We're getting along really well and we're agreeing on everything. Would you possibly be interested in getting married? And she goes, to you? And he said, yes, to me or to anybody, but specifically to me. And she said, I'm open to marriage. Let me think about it. And he's like, cool. And then the conversation went on to whatever else, they talked about. Really what they talked about was the 21st century. What are the possibilities of the world that if they had kids, what is the world their children would live in? And how could they raise kids in a way that their children would be both prepared for the 21st century as well as to be able to bring something good to the 21st century. And they found that they absolutely agreed on that too, which was wild. And mom called dad up almost a week later and said, "Hey," and he's like, "Yeah. Did you mean that about wanting to get married?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, I thought I had made that clear. Yes, I would like to get married." She's like, "But did you mean that about wanting to marry me?" And he said, "Yes, I thought I had made that clear, but yes, Patty, would you like to marry me, Albert?" And she said, "Well, yes, I would." And he said, "I'll be right over." And he like hung up the phone and walked to her house right then. And that was it. That was how our parents got engaged. On the first date / a week later, almost a week later. It wasn't quite a week later. She said they had gone on a date on Saturday and that she called him on Friday. She'd meant to call him on Thursday and then she forgot because ADHD is real. He was not mad that she had meant to call him the day before and, got distracted. He was like, "No, I understand. Me too." And that was how our parents got engaged. So again, like our parents are not exactly traditional romantic people either. Jenna says, "My parents dated for 6 months. Dad said he knew he loved her as much as he loved her boys. She was a mom of 3 and a widow. He asked the boys for permission to marry mom and so on." Aw, that's sweet.
But yeah, like actual love is compassion, and it's want to, have a better life with another person. And we see the elements, but they are separated in Cyrano.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we see these very same elements used against the characters and how they can dysfunction. And that is sort of what the perennial story of Cyrano is about, is how you can have all of these elements together. But because of personal pieces of your character, it can go from being a recipe for success to a recipe for disaster and tragedy. And I think that's why it's sort of stuck around. If anything, I was surprised that we don't see Cyrano more in American stuff, other than it's a tragedy. Americans don't like tragedy. But like in Europe, there's so many versions of it that's done in every country because people can relate. To me, like the difference between functional and how Cyrano becomes dysfunctional is up until the point where Cyrano, the very first night Christian visits Roxanne, and he has no words, and Cyrano steps in.
That bird is so insistent.
I know. I was just
Hush!
What is the word that Diane is trying to say that YouTube keeps blanking her out?
I think it might have been the underneath all the this message. Dear, in all honesty, I think my parents got horny and were raised strict Christians. That might have been it. Is that it?
I don't know. I'm curious of like, that bird. Speaking of horny bird.
Yep.
Because that's the majority of what birds are doing is either they're declaring their territory or they're advertising that they're available. That's mostly what birds are doing. Sorry, Taya.
But yeah, it's essentially the crux of it is where these two men both claim how much they love and care about Roxanne, but they take away her agency.
Mm-hmm.
Because of how the possible responses of hers would ruin their feelings.
their insecurities.
And essentially, it
That's-
goes from a compassionate love to a selfish love.
Mm-hmm.
Right there, we see it just laid out that for all their talk, this is actually selfish, what they are feeling.
That this is not agape love.
Yeah.
And you can tell it's not agape love specifically because it's taking away someone else's agency. It is hobbling the object of affection. And therein is the crux of the toxicity. Like, and I want to make that clear to writers. Know your toxic tropes so that you can then, in an informed way, decide if you are going to utilize this trope and either twist it so it's not toxic or it's less toxic, or you're going to like, no, I'm going straight in for this toxic trope. I'm making a point. Like, so that you are informed when you're writing about this, rather than later when readers are like, hey, so when the toxic couple, and you're like, wait, what? My characters are toxic. So this is why. Because like, I don't want writers to be like, I didn't know I was writing toxic characters and now they've blown up and all popular. Like, oh yes, because readers love the toxicity. So, and I am specifically thinking of the writer of the book. I can't remember what the actual book was called, but the TV series is You, about that serial killer. And the writer was writing about her father and did not realize that it's such a toxic character, and was very upset when informed during a panel Q&A about that. Had a real kind of crisis. And it delayed the coming out of the second book by months.
Wow.
This happens. This happens to all of us as writers, where we have a bit of a blind spot. Perfectly understandable. We all cannot be psychological geniuses before we ever start writing. That's not a thing. So instead, I want to bring up let's analyze specifically what makes this toxic. And then you can decide whether you want to include the toxic part in this trope in your writing, or whether you're like, you know what? I'll just pluck it out. I'm just going to pluck that out. It's no big deal.
And like, essentially, but also in the question all writers should have in most of their writings is this something for me to include as a character flaw?
Mm-hmm.
Is this something I want to see my characters grow through? How do I want this to be in the story? Or am I just going to write around it so we don't really address this in this story and we just don't see it show up much?
Right.
Because it's just not something I'm comfortable with writing right now for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll leave it in the background for another story. And those are all valid responses.
Yeah. And yes, writing is therapy, for better or for worse. Jenna's absolutely right. I think writing as therapy is a wonderful thing, because instead of you paying a therapist for therapy, you potentially could profit off of your therapy by writing it and selling it. How cool is that, right?
I mean, I sometimes actually kind of wondered as I was, rewatching Cyrano, as an older adult now, and then looking up, because of the power of the internet, of the author's age and where he was in life at the time.
Oh yeah, we really examined. Tom was like, are we sure the author wasn't an incel? And I'm like, sir, he had 2 children. He was already married. He had 1 child when he wrote this. By all accounts, he seems to actually be, at least, for the mid to late 1800s, a well-adjusted human being. And for a Frenchman, he was well-adjusted for all of that. And like, for his times, he was almost a feminist. His wife was a writer and a poet herself as well. And he certainly did not curb that in her. Like, by all accounts, he seems to be pretty well adjusted.
Well, and also that this was not his current life experience. He was definitely writing to a younger version of himself.
Yeah.
And it's what I ended up taking away from this story was that essentially this was his writing to people who idolize Romeo and Juliet.
Mm-hmm.
Who have really misconstrued that Romeo and Juliet is a tragedy, is not a romance. It has romantic elements, but Romeo and Juliet is not a romance. It is specifically written as a tragedy. By Shakespeare's own pen, by all of the critics and reviewers of the time, of the contemporary time. Romeo and Juliet is a tragedy. Always has been, always was. And Cyrano is to all those teenagers who do not understand, here, let me show you what happens when they get older and still do the same thing. They are still selfish. They say this is for others, but this is in the end all about them. I mean, Cyrano is... How old is Cyrano by the end of the story?
What was he, like,
in
50?
his late 40s, early 50s, something like that. Which the real Cyrano did not live that long.
Yeah.
The real Cyrano died in his mid to late 30s. Yep. I do love Much Ado About Nothing, like, oh, Denzel Washington. Oh, that was a certain sexual awakening for Little Glory. Yeah.
But I mean, he is an, you know, especially for that time period, you know, he is an old man, and he is still refusing to ever admit to the truth.
He doesn't admit to Roxanne. She has to figure it out. She is essentially puts on her deer stalker, and deductive reasoning goes, hold up, wait a minute. Let me think about this now. Let me really think about it. He's like the whole time denying, no.
How are you reading this letter in the dark when you can't even see? Oh, you had it memorized because you wrote it? What?
Now, how do you have this memorized when you've never seen it? This was sealed and came to me, and I've never shown it to anyone. Because I couldn't open it.
The little gray cells. Yeah. And he's like, oh.
As he is literally there dying.
He's dying, and he still won't deathbed confession to her. Like, he has plenty of bravery, but not courage. And truly courage in the French sense of what is courage, but heart in the French/Latin sense, the true romantic sense. And I mean romantic in Rome, not modern romance. It gets confusing. English is wild. But in the real Roman sense of what is courage is heart. Versus bravery is essentially a bravado, a false courage that you perform but you don't feel. And that is the difference between bravery and courage. So we learn Cyrano has lots of bravery versus Christian had real courage. And therein is the difference. Thank you. Romanized versus romanticized. Yes.
And we see this, and the difference is, Christian, on the battlefield truly finds his courage. Unfortunately, finding his courage then guilts him into not wanting to be around anymore because he is ashamed of who he has been and what he has done.
Well, depending on the version, that it kind of depends on the version you're watching, whether he, in kind of the older version, I think he kind of accidentally winds up, he's like, I'm going to go do this thing. I'm going to go be brave and do what needs to get done. And then, gets hit while he's out doing the thing. But some versions he's like, oh, now I need to, this is especially the version of Cyrano with Peter Dinklage. That version, Christian he intentionally is offing himself because of what everything going on.
Well, I mean, I was even looking at the 1950s version.
Yeah, it was
Of
very
just
similar.
the way it actually plays out. If you really follow the line of thinking, you see Christian go, I cannot live this life.
I guess, yeah. Now that you point that out.
Like, he literally talks about how he is ashamed of what they together, Christian and Cyrano, have done to Roxanne.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I've got to fix it, but I don't know how anymore. Will I ever even see her again?
And is me just being around causing more problems between those two?
Mm-hmm. Like, let's be honest, he is a himbo, and he's taking him a long time to process. And so,
I mean, he is an adorable golden retriever.
Absolutely.
In human form.
Mm-hmm. But, brains is not his strength. Like, it's not like he's an idiot, but, like, he's not a genius. And so it's taking him a little bit of effort to work this out. And essentially, he's working it out too late. That is, again, another tragedy. And it only becomes a tragedy because it's a freaking battlefield. And it's a rather infamous battlefield, particularly in French history. Like, in America, we're like, they could have made this battle up for all we care, because we definitely don't teach this in schools. Mm-hmm. But in France, this is actually a rather infamous battle, and it's truly a tragic battle from the French perspective.
Yeah, there is no winning in this battle for the French.
Which, if you know French military history, is all French military history. Like, I'm trying to be diplomatic, but
it's why France became very good at diplomacy.
It's why French hire people to fight for them. So let's see. Maggie says, I always felt like Christian tried to re-earn his honor through suicide by soldier because he broke the Maggie, and didn't realize he broke the protocol.
I took a little bit differently. I think it was, he thought that he could make more people happy by doing his plans as he had been doing, and then when he realized that he was causing more suffering for both Roxanne and for Cyrano, who he also cared for.
Like, yeah, I think he really grew attached to Cyrano from when he met him to the battlefield. Like, he really grew a respect for Cyrano. Cyrano essentially was protecting him that whole time period, from when they met face to face because Roxanne requested it, to the battlefield scenes. Cyrano had been trying to essentially mentor and big brother him and protect him. And so Christian, being a good person at the heart of him, became loyal to Cyrano. And so then realizing this, the sweet Labrador of a human being, realizing, hold up, I am the linchpin in this terrible situation. If I weren't here, maybe these two would work it out. And then we learned, no, these two are not going to work it out, even without you there. Because you'd have to have courage. And see, Christian has courage, and that's why he doesn't understand that the problem is that Cyrano does not have courage. So Cyrano, even without Christian, is not going to do the thing that he ought to, because he doesn't have heart. He only has bravado. And at the heart of it, brave people are cowards. Courageous people are not. There is the difference. And it's something that I feel like in our modern society, we really don't understand or discuss. That cowards are wily and will destroy themselves along with anyone who loves them in the process. That is the real societal problem with cowardice, is it is inherently destructive. I mean, speaking of millennial angst, Cyrano is a very relatable character to our modern times. Because
Versus, we see like
back together.
And we also see like Roxanne has a lot of courage.
She literally flirts her way across the Spanish borderline of this battle. She literally, like, y'all, it doesn't go into it as much in the movies, but in the plays, it's very detailed of she is flirting her way through the Spanish line to get to the French side. Are you kidding me?
Like in the play, she actually gets stopped by the Spanish, and she has to like outwit them using her feminine. She basically just says like, I have to go see my lover, because I love him so much, and they're so impressed by her her devotion to him that they like let her through. But she's hiding a secret, so she has to be careful that she doesn't, they don't like search her carriage because there's a secret.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, in that moment when she arrives on the French side of the battlefield, all the Frenchmen are impressed with her.
Mm-hmm.
Like even De Guiche is everybody's like, oh, look at her. She has courage. Christian has courage. Cyrano does not. And therein lies the destruction of this love triangle.
Mm-hmm.
Because with Christian dying, it really truly becomes in Cyrano's court. The ball is bounced to him. And then he doesn't do jack for 14 years.
And we see it throughout, though, of how Cyrano, because of his deformity, has had to learn how to bluff and how to develop this bravado, and has relied on this bravado his whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And that the bravado, if anything, is actually his crutch that keeps him from developing courage, because he never lets himself get put into a situation where he can lose. He only attacks when he knows he will win.
Mm-hmm.
The other people may not realize that they are about to lose because he has more experience at this point, but you get little hints throughout the story that just how well practiced Cyrano is.
Mm-hmm.
That Cyrano, for all his wit, does not actually come up with this off the cuff. He practices everything. He practices his sword fighting constantly.
Symptoms of the anxiety.
He practices his wit, again, constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And here's these people who are just showing up at the very, in a moment thinking, oh, we're on equal terms, and Cyrano knows. No, I have been doing this for decades now. You are an amateur who thinks you have a chance. Let me show.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just bravado.
Mm-hmm.
And the tragedy is we see that Cyrano is not, though, a bad person.
No, like none of these people. Actually, even the Duke is not like inherently evil. The Duke gets a redemption arc. What? He gets a really good redemption arc, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
especially
that one
model redemption arc.
Particularly in the book, they like totally redeem him. He becomes this. He actually in the book warns that Cyrano is going to be attacked, and they go off to warn Cyrano before the attack, but they find out a little too late.
That's actually in the 1950 movie as well.
Mm-hmm. Just not really as
good adaptation.
It is really a good
I
great
mean,
adaptation.
Like, he is easy on the eyes too. I'm just saying that's available. There's a lot of butt shots, is what I'm saying.
I learned, though, I judge the retellings in both the simple, I don't know what you call, like the literal retellings of, like, the 1950s and the Gerard Depardieu versions, as well as the figurative retellings like we see in Netflix's The Half of It and
Roxanne And Wishbone.
Wishbone.
The
Well, that one
Wishbone
actually is more of a
so
literal
much.
because they are
Well,
just trying to do the actual ones. But it just of the what happens with the Duke,
mm-hmm.
because a correct writing of this, we need the Duke's redemption arc to show that this was never a threat.
We need to be able to show a compare and contrast. Again, when we lose Christian, we need a different character to then offer the compare and contrast. Hence, the Duke then comes in to be that compare and contrast for us. Again, to show that this is truly a tragedy. That this is not just, oh, well, sometimes life sucks. No.
Or a that this is just through Cyrano versus the truth of this is just Cyrano's perception. The rest of the world all agrees on its perception. It's just Cyrano who disagrees.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why it's tragedy. If it is, we see through the Duke, I know this sounds like this odd, but for the times it was valid of the Duke showing even 15 years later that the kindness, compassion, and both inner and outer beauty of Roxanne had not diminished or changed.
Also, that the Duke had time to, have a redemption arc. That Cyrano, therefore, also had adequate time.
Mm-hmm.
We need that as a compare and contrast
Mm.
to show he had plenty of time. Both the Duke and Cyrano visited Roxanne more than a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see that, and that always Roxanne counseled both of them because she truly was a woman with heart. She was compassionate and she was also courageous, and she encouraged and modeled this for both of these men. And one redeemed himself and one chose not to. And therein lies the tragedy, is that we need the Duke to be that compare and contrast against Cyrano, to see that there was plenty of time, there was plenty of encouragement, there was nurturing, and yet Cyrano still did not. He chose not to because he chose to hide behind his bravado rather than be in the uncomfortable space and grow. Because it's not the only place humans can grow, but is definitely the place where humans are more likely to grow, is in the uncomfortable space.
Mm-hmm.
And we see, and the Duke had a much easier time to insulate himself and
Yeah, money
decided
will
not
really
to.
insulate you. Money, that is what money buys.
And power. He had a lot of both, and he did not. Versus Cyrano used all his resources to keep himself insulated.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't it actually the Duke who made sure that Cyrano kept his pension?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That Cyrano was never wanted.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually the Duke, and to a lesser degree Roxanne, making sure that
Mm-hmm.
because they saw how Cyrano deteriorated. Again, refusing to grow.
Yeah, at the end of the novel, or at the end of the play, he was living in basically squalor, a one-room apartment that was bare of like tables and chairs and stuff like that. It didn't have a lot of furniture. That's the word I'm looking for. And he didn't even have enough to keep himself warm, and all his clothes were threadbare, but all he had left basically was his pride.
Mm-hmm.
And he refused to see that the pride was what held him back.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you raise a good point of you need the Duke's redemption arc to again continue showing that compare and contrast and to be that foil.
Mm-hmm.
Or else you can just, very easily go, oh, well, it was just harder times. We didn't see, and just, he couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Versus no, he didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many people there that cared for Cyrano. And Cyrano again refused to even see that.
Like, we even see when he is visiting Roxanne that he is refusing food from the nuns. Like, from their soup kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so much pride. He's literally dying from pride more than a mortal wound. Of that this is what is killing him, is his pride.
Well, even in the play version, I don't know if it's in any of the other versions. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he gets hit on the head and is taken back to his apartment, and he's told, like, if you get up, you're gonna die. Like, just rest and you'll be fine. Or, hopefully you'll be fine. But it was his pride that he was like, no, I've never break a promise. Like, I have to go see Roxanne. Like, he couldn't, his pride wouldn't let him stay there and rest and recoup and get better. He thought he was better than a serious mortal injury.
Yeah, and we see versus, we are shown repeatedly the character of Roxanne. Roxanne is compassionate and understanding. This is not for Roxanne. Roxanne is not even a very anxious person who, would be prone to assuming the worst of someone's character or anything if something, should happen and they don't show up on a scheduled time. I mean, really, the way she, talks with the Duke, it is truly wow. She would have been a good stateswoman.
She would have been wonderful as a mother, as a wife, as an advisor. She was wonderful. Like, she truly was a wonderful person. If anything, I've gained far more of an appreciation for the Roxanne character than I ever had before. There was nothing wrong with Roxanne other than, let's be honest, she was 20 years old and horny. Like, truly, that is the happiest look of resignation I've ever seen on anyone's face. I'm
no.
fine. Fantastic. Highly recommend. But it's understandable when you're 20 years old.
Yes.
That's what you want to do. You want to bang it out, it's normal. It's perfectly reasonable. And like, that is not, a fatal flaw. Besides, the hormones will, calm down soon anyway. It's fine. It's fine. But that she's like this wonderful character. And in the next hour, we will talk about other adaptations and how it says so much about the adapters. Because it's like, these tropes are a very fascinating lens. Because we learn a lot about the person adapting to try to modernize or somehow change Cyrano de Bergerac. We see a lot about the adapter, what they keep and what they discard. And often what they discard is Roxanne being a wonderful person and character. Which, by the way, the Roxanne character is actually also based on Salvillon Cyrano's actual cousin.
Yes.
Catherine, who was married to a man named Christian. I'm just saying. Edmond actually did a pretty good adaptation to the real Salvillon Cyrano's life. So that's kind of fascinating. Like, we think of like doing a very good adaptation as being a more modern thing that, Victorian audiences did not care, but he did a pretty decent one. Like, yes, he did fictionalize a lot, in part because things weren't known. And also because socially, some things were just not socially acceptable. Like, Edmond could not do a play about Cyrano being a little light in the loafers, as my mother's generation used to call it. As the Hebrews say.
He was so good at dancing.
Yeah. But nevertheless, like why is like one of the few female characters the one that gets sacrificed on the altar of adaptation? Why is this happening so much? And what does that say about our modern societies? Especially considering, like, it wasn't like Roxanne in the original play was a two-dimensional character. In fact, she was not. She was truly a fully fleshed out character, just like all the other characters.
Yes.
So this we are going to examine of, excuse me, why is feminism the first thing to go? Inquiring minds. Well, thank you, Diane. We do try. We love to analyze. Next week, we're going to talk about Mel Brooks' work. So I hope you'll join us again. We're going to go and we're going to have a 10-minute bio break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about adaptations. You know, the thing that we all do. Because whether we realize it or not, if you're using a trope from an original piece like this, and you use that trope in another story, it is a type of adaptation, even if you're not necessarily consciously thinking about where that trope originally came from. But most tropes started in a piece of work, a piece of fiction that became popular. And I mean all the way back to the ancient Greeks and the ancient Egyptians. I mean all the way back to the Veda in India. Like everybody, even the Chinese, everybody has had stories that are so popular, they have spread throughout the land and then become tropes. That is the thing. So it's good to be aware of like adaptations and what we need to know. Brief interruption to bring you my new things I didn't expect to have to say as a parent. Don't say if you live to your phone. Oh, God. Good luck on raising a child in the 21st century. We'll see y'all in a few minutes. And also, since we're all going to take a little 10-minute bio break, I would like to say, do you have something to drink? This is a hydrate or dihydrate crowd. I'm going to go make myself some more tea, and I'm going to put an empanada in the toaster oven because I also am ready for a snacky snack. And so I just want to throw that out there. Also, did you know that popcorn is one of the official snacks of writers the entire planet over? I have this on good authority. I have been informed. So, hey, is it time for a snacky snack? We'll see y'all in a few minutes. Let me find my link there. Me, 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 me. Mimini, 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 meow. Welcome, welcome. Did you have a good break?
I was laying down for most of the break, so I'd say it was a good break. I also ate a tapioca pudding.
Nice. Kitty got out of her harness.
That cat.
Tom had her hooked up to a lead. Her harness was hooked up to the lead, and so she jumped out the window and got the harness off.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So she's out exploring the backyard, the neighbor's backyard, the other neighbor's backyard. He's being a menace to society right now.
And especially to the birds.
Yes. I think that's why she left out the back window.
That noisy bird, she had to go chatter at it.
You know, she has to chatter at them. She is Mrs. Kravitz from Bewitched. That is why Kravitz is her middle name. She is Leia Kitty Kravitz Fink. Because we call her Mrs. Kravitz sometimes. Abner. Anyway. Spence fed the babies. Very nice. Or a baby. Anyway. I'm sure that baby's appreciative. Is it the teething one or the non-teething one? I suspect that since the non-teething one is the cranky one, that one is just teething. It's just you can't see it yet.
Gonna have 2 toothy babies.
Mm-hmm. It is that time.
We're
both looking. Hi, Everett.
Hello.
StreamYard's having a bit of a problem today. It keeps telling me that there are 0 people watching.
Yeah.
I was wondering
if the API changed.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was just because I had problems with this browser earlier and had to shut it down and restart it. So I was wondering if it was just the browser I was using. Maggie ate a bowl of chili and watched a thing on the eastern earthquake zones. Yes, it's gonna come. By the way, and made popcorn because I hope it's delicious popcorn.
It keeps writers going.
Yes, they don't talk about the eastern earthquake zone. One day, it's gonna be bad.
The Mississippi gonna run backwards.
Yep. That'll be the least of the problems, honestly. Let's see. Maggie is listening to the stream and doing laundry. And Jenna is cleaning. And Diane, does that mean we don't really exist? Oh, no.
So there is actually a writer who has addressed this question.
By imagination.
So there is actually a writer who has addressed this situation and is not who people would think it is.
Which one?
Robert Heinlein.
I was about to say, is it Heinlein? Because that's the only one I could think of off the top of my head who has addressed this issue.
Where he had a multiverse way back. And one of his...
In the 70s, children, so long ago.
And one of his writer characters through the multiverse encounters one of his characters he wrote. And the character has an existential crisis, and the writer just deals with a lot of guilt. And he does this a couple different times. Including maybe one of his own characters guilting him into continuing the story just so it doesn't end on such a downer and everyone dies. We exist because we have impact. Even fictional characters exist because they have impact. Cyrano has had a lot of impact on people
I think Cyrano has definitely been a conversation starter to talk about what we now call ableism.
Mm-hmm.
What is interesting to me about the Cyrano de Bergerac story overall is in the story, Cyrano's nose is not really much of an issue, except like in a general public sort of, hey, did you see that guy? Like it's like it's a conversation starter. His nose is definitely a conversation starter. And then that's it. Like it doesn't continue the conversation. But like of the people that we get to know in the Cyrano de Bergerac story, his nose is a non-starter issue.
Yeah.
It is Christian does not have, other than the very beginning where Christian is like, but your nose, it is so nosy. Like it is right there. I cannot not see it. It is always here. It is here before you. You know, like he just has to cope. He's like you could tell he's little brain. It is a slow process because he's a golden retriever of a human.
But he's
But
not actually judging
no, he's not. He's just
Cyrano for the
impressed.
nose.
He is very impressed. He's just so impressed he can't not. It's like, have you ever met somebody so tall that like they can reach everything on top of the shelves at the grocery store? I have, because I live in college towns. They attract basketball players. They attract tall people, and it's like, oh, finally somebody who can reach that thing I can't. Please, sir, please reach the thing. Or one time, please, ma'am, you are amazing. Also, have you ever watched Futurama? There's like an entire planet of glamazons, and you could join. You're gorgeous. And yeah, I was so impressed. I said that out loud. Thankfully, she took it well. Um,
I mean, and then I always love to see like who I test their processing speed by just asking the question of, so it's a very dusty world where you live, huh?
yes. But the point being, to the people who know Cyrano, his nose is not even like something that they talk about. They don't go, how are the birdies today? Nobody cares. Because who cares? That's really not, it's not even an issue. Like Cyrano doesn't even bring up his nose hardly at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not something that you talk about with him. Unlike maybe somebody in a wheelchair, you might actually talk about their wheelchair more, mostly of how we got to get from A to B. There's several tiny doorways. You know, do we have plans? Can we go around? You know, like so if you're talking to somebody with like who essentially needs more mobility aids, you're going to talk about it for utilitarian purposes. But since Cyrano's nose offers no utilitarian issues or no mobility issues, it's really just not much of a conversation starter throughout the entire story. However, what I think is interesting is my entire life. So I was born, let me just say, I'm a child of the 80s. I realize I don't look it. I don't know, I'm kidding. But my entire life, people talk about Cyrano's nose rather than, but that's not really something to talk about in the story. And yet in real life, people talk about his nose a lot. If you bring up Cyrano de Bergerac, they're like, oh, that nose. Like, why is that what you talk about? But what I'm saying is it's really a conversation starter to talk about ableism. Because Cyrano's nose in no way impedes his ability to be a military star. It in no way impedes his swordsmanship. It offers him no problems in succeeding, as we see, in succeeding in all of his endeavors in the world. So why do people talk about it so much in our real life? And so I think what I posit is that this story has inadvertently really prompted a lot of people to figure out their prejudices about people who are different. And for some people, that meant they got over it. And that has brought a lot of good into the world. I am so glad that we have terms like ableism so that we can name the thing when we encounter it in real life. That sounds like ableist talk. Or, I think you have some internalized ableism. It's time to let that go. Because, like Cyrano, is he thinks his nose is preventing people from falling in love with him. We literally see from the start, even the barmaid is like, please take food. I love you. You are so lovely. And he's like, no, I'll take this one grape. Like, oh God, sir. Ugh. She is into,
One grape, half a macaron, and some water.
like, she is hot for you, buddy.
I mean,
Like,
we truly get that. We truly understand that while
seal the deal.
while Christian may bring up that, you know, Cyrano's nose precedes him to every room, Cyrano's pride precedes Cyrano to every town.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel that pride entering a new, you know, area code. And this is the real reason that Cyrano is an incel.
Mm-hmm.
It is not his nose. It is not anything but his pride that stops him and hinders him and is his true disability in life. Because, yeah, no one talks about Cyrano as such a great swordsman in spite of his nose.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
No one says he is a good leader in spite of his nose. And like, can you know, it's amazing how well he sees with that schnoz in front of him. No one says that. The only people who ever say that is someone who, you know, are the rude, ableist people in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we see the barmaid. To a lesser degree, we see Roxanne confused by why Cyrano has not found a woman to marry. Like, she brings up
Mm-hmm.
the still no one. So she obviously, you know, we are shown in multiple ways that it is not the nose. Except in Cyrano's mind, no one could see beyond it. And the truth is, no one cares unless they are a person of low character.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know,
and definitely the women in his orbit are not, the nose is a non-issue for them. Because they're more interested in his beautiful words, his fantastic swordsmanship, those thighs. Like, he is the whole package. Other
Okay.
than, I'm going to say, I don't feel like he's good at money management, and I feel like that is like the only reason to not
Yeah.
bang it out with Cyrano. Is,
Yeah.
excuse me, how can you feed my babies that we will make together if you are so flippant with finance?
Although, let's be honest, if we can for a moment, since it's past the 15-minute mark.
Yes.
There's definitely a few women who are actually curious about Cyrano because that nose, because they plan on riding him like a broomstick.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's totally fine.
That barmaid was. She had plans. She had a full evening planned that Cyrano just refused to understand. And there is his captain, just again looking at him like, you fool. She wants to jump you faster than the Spanish.
She wants to ride you into war, sir. Yes, there are particular positions where a big nose is very useful, y'all. And if you've never dated somebody with a big old schnoz, you have missed out. I'm so sorry. I may actually be speaking from experience, but since we are too far in,
But yeah, we see like it is, again, this is the real reason for the tragedy of that Rostand wrote this well. Like, he made sure to include the elements to understand all the characters and what is really going on without there being much doubt or question about the validity. It is never from just a single perspective we understand anything. It is always made sure to include from multiple perspectives. We see the perspective of not just Cyrano and not just the main other three characters. We also see it from the perspective of the men who serve with and under Cyrano. We see it from the perspective of the other rich and aristocrats of the time.
We would see it from Ragueneau, the
yes.
pastry chef.
And poet.
And poet.
Look, come on. It's French. Like, could there be a stronger French stereotype than this? Like, everybody's a poet in this play? What?
But I mean, but we hear from all these other people who have, I forget what you call it, but they have comprehension of the skills they speak of.
Mm-hmm.
To speak about Cyrano from that perspective. So it's never just one commenting or just Cyrano's perspective. We have multiple people confirm the thoughts that Rostand is trying to make, which also I appreciate. So there's not as much ambiguity in this of, you know, the tragedy is the reality of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where the way it has been adapted is so telling about the person adapting and their own frame of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if anything, I'll be honest, like I kind of enjoyed watching Roxanne when I was a kid, way back. I didn't think that much about it in my, you know, in my teens and early 20s, and now I watch it, I'm like, ugh.
Mm-hmm. Cringe.
It's just cringe. What is wrong with Steve Martin? Other than stuff most people already knew.
Mm-hmm.
It is such a poor adaptation, and again, they, as Gloria was saying before the hour, they stole Roxanne's agency. Daryl Hannah doesn't have much agency in this story.
They stole Roxanne's agency more than Cyrano and Christian did. They made Daryl Hannah's version of Roxanne superficial, vacant, shallow, and she's supposed to be an astronomer. And they made her just horny. Just horny and shallow, and doesn't care that Christian in the Roxanne movie has no substance. He does not have a deep thought to save him, versus the Christian in Edmond Rostan's version actually has thoughts. He's just not good with words, but he has deep feelings. And for that, I definitely respect him.
Mm-hmm.
He has very deep and honest feelings. Like, he's not just horny. He actually thinks she's amazing. And he also thinks CyraNose amazing. And he's just really thrilled that he's lucky enough to be surrounded by all these fantastic people. He is genuinely happy in his life, versus the Christian character in the movie Roxanne. There is nothing happening upstairs. The little gerbil in the wheel left and went to Maui years prior. There is nothing. I don't even know how he passed his fireman test. And then they kind of show how well he fits right in with this particular fire department, because none of them are easily passing their firefighter test.
Yeah. Which also kind of ends up implying that Steve Martin's Cyrano
is rather.
I can't remember the character's name got changed to.
Oh, yeah, they changed it to something like, oh, what was it? Now I gotta look it up.
But like, implies that he is not competent at being a captain either. That he is so distracted by, you know, his own self-pity that he is just not competent, versus, you know, the original story.
Charlie C.D. Bales.
Oh, did Glory freeze?
Sorry, I had an internet
anyone
glitch
else?
there for a moment.
Yeah, like it totally.
Yeah, you froze for me for a second.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. But and that's why, yeah, Glory Diary just it's such a rough adaptation, because the elements that were changed didn't take up that much time, so it wasn't necessary to change them, and instead they changed them, and they changed the characters in doing so.
Mm-hmm.
Versus I loved, Wishbone's version, CyraNose.
So cute.
Watch it on YouTube.
In part because it shows how simple this story is. Because you can get the full CyraNose story, all the important parts,
in like 6
4
minutes.
scenes.
That's why I like, and that's why I'm actually recommending that anybody who's interested in playing with these tropes watch the Wishbone version, because it is actually so beautifully and correctly adapted by just winnowing down what do you actually need to technically carry this entire story while not missing any of the important beats. And it does it. Like, okay, there's also some weird like other story, because there's like the real life story going on. I don't know what is happening with that teacher and the artist neighbor, but there better be babies later, is all I gotta say. like dang, those two are thirsty. Oh, you can definitely tell it was the 90s before dating apps, because these two do not have a single section in their classifieds, apparently.
Yeah.
Like, dang. But I do actually recommend, like, I'm not going to recommend children's versions of a lot of stories, except, of course, Wishbone does very good adaptations. And also, may I say that for the most part, the original DuckTales also does a great adaptation.
They did also do a version of Cyrano.
They did do a version of Cyrano. So, but like, seriously, the Wishbone version is available on YouTube. So I definitely recommend. In fact, there's one that's just the entire half-hour episode. And there's a different version that somebody broke it up into 3 videos, like, 10-minute each, kind of. I highly recommend that if you're interested in playing with these tropes, watch the Wishbone version. Also, can I just say that dog is so cute? Like, it really helps the story move forward. He is adorable. At one point when he is like parrying with the one guy in the theater, he's like, they put the little dog on the man's chest. He's just laying there. What? It's just, the dog is so cute in the little outfits. Oh my God, I died.
Yes. I love all the outfits. Oh.
But again, if you are interested, honestly, if you're interested in playing with any tropes from any story that Wishbone covered, I highly recommend go watch the Wishbone version. This is like, by the way, according to Wikipedia, they are working on a new Wishbone movie.
Yay! Oh, I'm gonna see it.
Yes, there is already a Wishbone movie that they came out with in the late 90s.
How did I not see that?
I don't know. I thought you would have, actually. That's why I didn't think to mention it till now. But
I didn't even know it existed. Like, if I had
known Wild West or something, I don't know.
I need to see this.
But there is a Wishbone movie, so this will be the second movie adaptation made of Wishbone. I actually have good hopes that it'll be good. But again, like, there's only, I think, a total of 60 Wishbone episodes total. I would encourage you to like look at, like, anybody who's interested in playing with tropes from various classic stories. The Wishbone adaptations are quite good. Also, that dog is just so cute. So it's so easy to watch these adaptations.
And they're short. I mean, they're little half-hour.
They really do winnow out all the things that are not necessary for you to understand the basic premise of the story, though. And that's what I like about the Wishbone adaptation versions of classic novels, classic stories, is you don't have to go, but now I got to go read the entire novel and then figure out what is required and no, you don't. You go watch the Wishbone version. It's like a Cliff Notes, but a true Cliff Notes that is very watchable, because that dog is so flippin' cute. And the outfits are so... Why are the outfits historically accurate for a frickin' dog? These, like, as somebody who likes a little historical costuming, don't ask, I'm just obsessed. Why are the outfits historically correct on a dog more? Why are, like Wishbone costumes are correct, and also A Muppet Christmas Carol, all those costumes are correct? Why is it for, like, puppets and dogs? But, like, real people, oh no, we have to, like, give it a modern flair. No, we don't. Yes. So if you are a Gen Xer, and I gather a few of you are, there is also the truth about cats and dogs. Again, if you are interested in watching a modern-ish story, play with the Cyrano tropes. And again, you can insert tropes into any story. I have read science fiction with Cyrano tropes in them. I've read fantasy novels with Cyrano tropes. I've read romances with Cyrano tropes in them. There's no genre that Cyrano does not fit. Why? Good reasons why these tropes actually fit into any genre. And that is because these tropes are specific to people, to human psychology. And if you have humans, then you can put Cyrano tropes in. Honestly, technically, you could do it even without, because humans are not very good about writing non-human psychology. So we keep inserting human psychology even into aliens when we write aliens. So don't worry. Just put it in.
And I think one of the really useful things about this Cyrano story for writers to utilize is if there's not a lot of good examples of how do I have a group of all good characters written into a rock and a hard place that they put themselves there, and that they don't want to escape, like they are truly afraid of escaping. Because no one's bad in this, but halfway through the story there is Christian and Cyrano both knowing that they are trapped in a situation
that they will likely not survive,
that they want to get out of, and they can't find a way, because if they break the status quo, they are certain it will be worse. They do not feel that they deserve forgiveness for their actions, and so they are stuck. And that is where real drama and emotional impact is. And so it's a great example for how do you write your characters into that situation. Just steal from how Edmond did what he did with Cyrano and Christian and Roxanne, and you can get your characters into a similar situation. It is what works so well in both The Truth About Cats and Dogs and The Half of It.
So Maggie has a question, Tom.
How do I make as the insecurity of the antagonist believable?
Well, like all good lies, it needs to be based in truth. There needs to be a touch of truth in order for a lie to be viable. And that's what insecurities are, is they are lies.
So as long as the lie is maintained, they will always get just a little bit of taste of what it is they really want. And that is why they will keep that lie going, is because they are still getting a small taste. Cyrano is still getting the validation of Roxanne by sending these letters, by reciting these words to Roxanne as Christian. He gets that validation from her he's always wanted, even if he cannot, quote unquote, seal the deal. Christian gets the attention from Roxanne
that he definitely craves.
But he also gets to give Roxanne the mental stimulation he wants for her. He wants her to be happier, and he sees she is happier with this. So again, he wants to keep that, because if he were to reveal the truth, they would all lose. And that's where it becomes believable, is there is a possibility that it could work out, but there's a high possibility it won't. And then they will not even get a taste of what they are going for, even though, no, they will never get a meal of this. Yeah, they all suffer, and there's no enemy except within. But it's that fear of change of the status quo that is what everyone believes in and what drives the Cyrano story. Because the only way to solve the problem is to admit the truth and let it settle, let the dust settle, even if it's not for the best outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what they're afraid of is, but what if it doesn't work out the way I want it to? Well, then go about your life and do more. This is not the end all be all of your life.
Also, obsession is destructive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you're finding yourself obsessed about a person, it is more than likely not in reality about that person. Something about that person is tickling something in you that you have not dealt with. Whether it's a trauma or an insecurity, there's something. And that's why you're obsessing about a person, is because it's a way to approach the problem from the side.
I mean, and it's very clear in the Cyrano story what that is for Cyrano, which is Roxanne is both outwardly attractive by everyone's acknowledgement, as well as well-liked and appreciated by Roxanne and Cyrano's shared family. She was always liked, versus Cyrano was rejected by his father. And so he can get validation from his family that he never got by proxy through Roxanne. That's part of why he craves her validation. Again, I'm always surprised at how much, Edmond actually just lays everything out of let there not be no questions for any of these characters. I'm going to make it all as blatant as possible.
What impresses me is that he does all of this and then he does it in rhyme. There's a whole bunch of word play going on in Rostand's play. It's not just Cyrano who has the witty lines and the clever, comebacks and stuff like that. All the characters have their own way of speaking, but it still has this rhyme scheme to it throughout the whole story that I enjoy.
I mean, there's a reason Edmond Rostand was elected to the French Academy, and he was the youngest elected member, I think, to this day.
Nice.
He was a genius. Now, maybe his wife helped him. I'm not saying no. But still, let us say the two of them together as a power couple. They definitely deserved the accolades they received in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Edmond Rostand also wrote not one, but 2 plays for Sarah Bernhardt. So also not anti-Semitic. I appreciate that. And they're still lauded. I mean, his work is still appreciated. It's more appreciated in France because language barriers.
Mm-hmm.
But he's very talented. Absolutely talented.
Speaking of things that are actually laid out, but yeah, as a teenager, it's hard. It's so hard for teenagers to read subtlety.
So Maggie says, when I first read Cyrano in high school, I was like, how does Roxanne not know that it's Cyrano writing it? Is she stupid, or does she just want to Harlequin novel trope of the hot guy with the hot brain? So we actually see this when Roxanne meets Cyrano at the pastry chef's business. We see in the interaction between Cyrano and Roxanne that often around Roxanne, Cyrano gets tongue-tied. And that is why. And it does explain why she doesn't realize it's Cyrano's writing. Because when he is around her, he can't think straight. And so she doesn't know that those words are his. Because he, like most people, when you are around a person that you truly love, your brain gets kind of obsessed with all the other things. You're not thinking about it. and words fail you for a little bit because you're overwhelmed with feeling. I mean, there's a reason in musicals that's when people sing.
And we see also the other side of where Roxanne says explicitly she has never spoken or heard Christian speak.
So she doesn't know.
She is curious and would like CyraNose's help.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is why Cyrano is able to essentially take over Christian's words in the shadows in the first meeting. Because again, she doesn't really know his voice that well.
Mm-hmm. She even says in a couple versions and the play itself, like, oh, he even is more eloquent than you are. Like, she comments on his cleverness with Christian's alleged way with words, and she finds it more eloquent than CyraNose.
And again, like, he's overwhelmed with feeling. Like, obviously, CyraNose's actually been in love with her for a very long time.
Yeah, and especially if you're reading it, it can be a little bit harder, especially for especially for teenagers. Teenagers have a hard time understanding emotion. Like, that is another part to just remember about your younger self, Maggie. That, you've seen the teenagers. You know the teenagers now. You ever see a teenager guess emotions correctly?
No. And I used to teach teenagers. I have taught teenagers where I thought a teenager was actually pretty smart. And then I made them watch maybe a scene from a movie or read them a scene from Shakespeare, and they were absolutely wrong on every point about what every character was feeling. Like, to the point I'm like, what the hell happened to your brain? How do you not know how they feel in this moment? I have literally translated this scene for you. Hamlet is telling Ophelia she needs to go to a whorehouse because he is calling her a whore. And you think that she would be impressed with him? How is that how she's feeling? Is that how you would feel? If somebody called you, somebody who, like, uses sex for a living? And they're like, like, it's just teenagers. They're just not. Maggie says, Cyrano, like Christian, are both in love with the idea of Roxanne more than being truthful with her, right?
It's like they truly idolize her. They have turned her in their minds.
They put her on a pedestal, and that means they've objectified her.
Yeah.
No one on a pedestal can be a real human being. People on pedestals don't fart.
Yeah.
Ever notice? How are they going to go to the bathroom? They're on a pedestal. People think, oh, well, I put them on a pedestal. They don't need to go to the bathroom. Oh, they need to go to the bathroom. Jenna says, the few teenagers who are clued in normally have done tons of therapy or became parents young themselves, in my experience. Mm-hmm. Like, essentially, they had to grow up real fast.
Yeah.
Where women are a trade who control their own destiny more than a royal lady. Yep.
By the way, I think you might enjoy the sentiment from
Jenna.
By
the power of musical theater, they are magically going through blank in X number of minutes. But I mean, that is like what musicals do, right? Is when the feelings are too much, you sing about it. And when, like, you're feeling even stronger than that, you dance it out.
Oh, it was really funny. Speaking of that, we were watching, and speaking of Cyrano, we were watching South Park, and they took one of the songs from Cyrano, the scene where she's writing about they did kind of a Cyrano sort of themed with Chat GPT. It was really funny. But they used the song from Cyrano where she's like singing about the letter that she's got, and the curtains are blowing in the wind as she's singing, and they used that song, and I just thought it was hilarious and very apropos for what we were talking about today.
Yes, I truly feel, though, for all high school teachers who are trying to teach literature, to teenagers, because that is the hardest time to teach anyone. Because a lot of literature, a lot of stories are about emotion. And if you don't understand the emotion,
it's not like teenagers are trying to be obtuse. We know for a fact that hormones are short-circuiting their brain during this time period. Like, again, I'm not trying to just drag teenagers. All right, a little bit. But it's not their fault. It's absolutely, in fact, not their fault. It's like blaming somebody with ADHD for being inattentive. Like, look, it's not their fault. Their brain is wired funny. And I say that as somebody with ADHD. Of like, again, it's not teenagers' fault, but it is something to be aware of about teenagers, including our teenage selves. Of, guess what? We were wrong a lot back then. We were clueless even more than we were wrong.
It's why I appreciate the honesty of a scene in the half of it where the English teacher, like, essentially admits that she has known for the last year or two that the Cyrano character has been writing half of the school's papers for her class. And she's like, well, if you knew, why did you turn me in? And she's like, and have to read their actual papers? No, I'd rather just read yours.
Speds. We're both clicking it.
Okay.
I'm in a glass case of emotion. Name the emotions. Teenager dies. Yep. Jenna says, we just went over all the ways Beatrice is downright dragging Benedict through the muck verbally this week, and one student asked if Shakespeare ever gets away from the angst. Oh, no. Oh, no. No.
You don't understand. Oh, teenager, sweet teenager. Adults are more petty.
That. If he could have, he would have trademarked it in his lifetime. Oh, are you kidding? Yeah. Besides, Beatrice dragging Benedict through an entire play is my favorite part. Like she is just taking him to the library every time she sees him. He really should run from her more often than he does in the play.
Although part of it is Beatrice has been so burned so many times. She is essentially on the proactive attack to just prevent anything further. And that is the point, is he has to essentially wear her down because he knows that's not actually him.
I think he also needs to prove to her that he is not a delicate man-child.
Yes, that too.
She's tired of that. She is tired of being gentle about things that she shouldn't have to be gentle about. You know? I mean, get over it, buddy. That hurt. They were flirting, you rubes. Yeah. Show them the Dave Tennant. Oh my God. I love that version. Have y'all seen that version of Much Ado About Nothing? Where, I guess, is it supposed to be British? I think it is supposed to be British people, like vacationing on the Italian Riviera or something like that. And
the Italian or the French Riviera.
Anyway, in the late 80s. And it is so 80s. Tom is like, do you feel called out? I'm like, yes. How dare they come for me like this? That party scene when they're all dancing and the music and the clothes. How dare they roast me? I mean, they said it right at the very beginning. She knows him of old. She knows his soldier-like ways. Yeah, she is going to drag him to hell. I wish I could show the Denzel. Oh, no.
What? I was able to see the Denzel version.
Oh, the Denzel version.
Although I will say, other than it's harder to get access to, I love the, what was it, 2019, 2020? Yes, 2020. It was right before the Great Performances, PBS Great Performances version in New York.
No, it wasn't in New York. It was in Atlanta.
Oh, you're right. It's in Atlanta.
They literally filmed it at Tyler Perry's studio that he constructed for this. He
And
constructed an
God,
outdoor stage.
the acting
For
is just.
Yes, it is fantastic. We had to go to very dark places on the internet to find a copy. It is so good. It is so well done. The staging is amazing.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't have Denzel at the height of Denzel.
Like Tom, I used to have all sorts of fantasies about Keanu and Denzel together and me in the middle. Like, that was an awakening, y'all, for little middle school glory.
But as far as like acting and emotion and just the best speaking I have heard of it. The Great Performances one in Atlanta is the best I have ever come across.
Jenna, since you're actually teaching like in a university setting, you might want to see if your library can like get a copy of the Great Performances so you could show it, because it is really freaking good. Like, I cannot stress enough how good it is.
And it has been updated for modern audiences, so it would be easier for the kids.
Yeah, the language is updated a bit, and instead of, I think it is more like centers around the civil rights movement. But I'm not sure. I can't remember now because I have slept since I watched it. I watched it a couple months ago. Sorry, I couldn't remember what. We've got someone else I think teaches at university, and you teach at a school. I'm sorry,
but still, the school might have access.
Yes, but yes, Keanu's pants are doing a lot of work for him in that version. Oh my god, that costume designer deserves awards for pouring multiple men into multiple pants. Thank you. They did their service. They did their service to my adolescence. Anyway. Much Ado About Nothing is just so much fun.
Yes.
It's my favorite of the Shakespeare comedies. My second favorite is As You Like It. Because how is it a comedy if there's not cross-dressing anyway? Like, I am fascinated by Tennessee. Oh no, you can't have cross-dressing anymore. And I'm like, the hell you say? It's like all of y'all so ignorant you don't even know Shakespeare?
Well, I mean, yeah.
I'm gonna exhale teacher frustration in this moment. Spence. Are y'all just having fun playing with the filters on the chat? I feel like you're definitely trying to see what you get away with there.
All right. I think it's time for a break.
Okay. We're going to take another little 10-minute bio break. And when we come back, Tom,
we're going to talk about modern retelling, specifically the Americanization of Cyrano and the changing a tragedy into a drama. And I feel like the story of Cyrano is a great example to see the difference between what makes it tragic and how you can just make it dramatic, if you're not sure which type of story you want to do.
Yeah, Americans are not much into tragedies. And the reason why is because a tragedy, a proper tragedy, says there's no hope, versus a travesty is usually about corruption. A tragedy is, oh, it's just how life is. Meh. You know, like that there's no agency, there's no autonomy. There's nothing that could have been prevented or fixed or remedied. And
tragedy only exists to Americans. Tragedy only exists in a Calvinist universe that they refuse to believe in.
So Americans are not really into tragedies for the most part, and I absolutely agree, being a true American, I too don't like tragedies because tragedies say give up now. Versus the American spirit is there's always a way, we'll find it. And so again, so how do we Americanize this? Because you know what? I am not sad about exporting this particular little cultural quirk of Americans. This can-do attitude that says a drama is fine, but a tragedy, bummer. So that's what we're going to talk about. So stick around. This is important. Well, yes, you had some exactly, Spence, you got it. That's exactly it. And Americans are just not much into tragedies, and I concur. So we will see y'all in a few minutes. Make sure to you got something to drink. Did she come in?
No.
Put on some shoes. She's probably in the backyard.
Oh, I misread it first. Effing banger as finger banger.
I read it as finger banger too, and I was like, "What the hell are y'all doing?" But you're not wrong. I may have found it alluring.
You spent so much time alone watching that.
That was what Dad was like. So the last 2-3 years of.
Did you mute?
Yeah, it doesn't show. Hold up. So sorry. Me-me-me-me. Me-me-me-me-me. Me-me-me-me. 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 Well, did everybody have fun?
I hear you weren't muted during the.
Yeah. Yes, now y'all have a clue how Tom and I really do talk to each other. Unedited.
Darn it, I missed it. I'll have to go back and watch.
Hmm. Yes, Tom. Yes, after I did mute, Tom then dragged me for like a solid 3 minutes as he laughed so hard.
But okay, so go on to the next subject of how do we change this from tragedy to drama?
At last, drama.
Because to me, the difference between tragedy and drama is always about growth. Something changes over time, whether it's the world around the character or the character. One of them changes.
Mm-hmm.
In a good drama, both change. And so that is what I have to say. Like, I did appreciate about Alice Wu's writing for the half of it. She takes, a good update modernization of Cyrano for the first 3/4 of the movie. And then she twists it to an American audience taste. And she refuses to let it stay a tragedy. She continues it and lets the characters change and show themselves and be better people. And go, you know what? You're right. The status quo sucks. I would rather see things change, even if it's the risk of it not ending up as good as it was. Because as long as you're alive, things change. And it does help as well that these are, in the story, teenagers. Like, they are not yet trapped in their lives. They've all got so many options to take, and they need to see that. But yeah, I like that it shows that just because the original version is written in this particular style of a tragedy, it doesn't mean that to stay true to it, you can't adapt it and change it into it now being a drama. Or heck, you could change it into a comedy. But you can change its genre without losing the messages in the characters and the story. And yes, unlike several American adaptations, the half of it keeps Roxanne being a well-rounded character who is just herself. Although she is very honest in that, because in this one, it is a slightly gender-bent version. We have the Roxanne character say to the Cyrano character, it's not that I never thought about you that way. But I'm not that person right now.
Mm-hmm. Essentially, I'm in high school. I'm still figuring myself out.
And it's not that you are unlovable, that you are uninteresting.
It's that I'm still figuring myself out.
Yeah.
Give me a couple years. And they even say, maybe we'll see each other in a couple years. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying not right now because I don't know. And I really like that because that is so much more honest. Also, thankfully, at least 2 out of the 3 of them are going to college. I understand the third one, the Christian character,
who is definitely kept true to type.
Yes, who's very he's going to stay home and work on his family's sausage recipe. Like, yes, you are. You just go live your best life, Paul. His mother, Paul's. What I love, though, by the way, is Paul's mother would rather he be gay than change the family recipe. And you know what? That's very honest and also adorable. Mommy loves you even if you're gay. I'm not gay, but I am thinking about changing Nana's recipe. No, absolutely not.
In church.
And his other brothers are like, yeah, let's change the recipe. No notes.
And they also show that, you know, the Duke's character is someone who is sure of themselves and knows that they have a good life and understands why other people would like them. And wants Roxanne's character to be happy with him. But he is not like just offended that she ends up not being interested. He's a little surprised, but he is a little into himself.
Yeah, he's very into himself. But, I mean, they do establish that the other, peers in high school think he's good looking, which he is not ugly. And that his father owns half the town. So, it's a good life to have. These are all true things. Like, this is not false or misleading. Like, yeah, he's got a lot of selling points, including his father owns half the town. So, financially you'll be in a good place, which that's fair. Like, let us be honest about finances can definitely and should probably be a consideration when you're talking about starting a family. Because, and I have been told this, one of the true tragedies is when one of your babies goes to bed hungry and there's nothing you can do about it. That is the thing that will break a person. So, again, wise people will counsel young people who are thinking about starting a family of make sure that you can feed your babies because it'll break you if you ever can't.
And Alice also took good notes of the CyraNose story, that we don't need true villains in this story.
Mm-hmm.
The villain is the status quo. That is the actual villain everyone fights against. So even the Duke's response to Cyrano, when the Duke character is like, "Oh, you've been hanging around all this time because you're interested in me." His response is not outright rejection. In a healthy way.
Not Cyrano.
Yeah, but I understand why you'd be interested in me, and you are actually an interesting person. I'm just don't feel that way about you.
Oh, he only says that after her father sprayed water on him as he went in for a kiss, though. So
that's true. Like he is definitely a bit of a man.
I think he's more doing a spin job on like his attempts to kiss her were dashed by her father with like a kitchen sink sprayer. Like, no, go away. Which by the way, kudos. And also the dad in this movie is so beautiful. Yeah, the truth. It was just the friends we made along the way. Dad, you're killing me.
Yeah, it took me a while to figure out why he looks so familiar, but I mean, most recently you know him from the Matrix Revolutions, but Gloria and I better know him from playing the Jade Emperor in the Forbidden Kingdom, Jackie Chan and Jet Li movie.
Which is one of my favorites.
And I know him best playing Liu Kang in the original Mortal Kombat. But how has he just aged to look better and better?
He's so beautiful.
In the last 20 plus years, he's actually only gotten better looking.
If anybody sees someone who looks like this guy, who is single and into curvy women, y'all, you need to contact me, and you also need to send him my picture, okay?
Also, to hear him act in Mandarin, he's got a voice.
Oh, he's so.
Or is it Cantonese? I can't remember. Because he's actually from Taiwan, so it's like, wouldn't it be Cantonese? Anyway,
Yes. Megan says, I could go on a rant about children going to bed hungry and the mom's reaction determining worth of a person as a mother and human being and the sad lack of care from baby boomers toward it. Then later generations. He's Cantonese. Okay. Yeah. And that's why, like, even when I was young, wise people counseled me of before you think about making babies, you need to make sure that you and that other person can feed babies. Which really did curb and it was actually one of the reasons my father had encouraged me to date women in high school and college. It was actually, that was one of his presentation selling points, for real. Like, he had a literal bulleted list he'd written down. I have it somewhere. It shows up every once in a while in my life. It's on a yellow legal pad paper. And he had, I think it was like 7 bulleted point reasons why I should date women till at least I graduate college. That's right. You know, only part-time lesbian. Not full-time, but part-time. Like, and little did he know, oh, Daddy, I was all ready. But I was not about to tell him that because I was very private about my personal life. But yeah, I was doing a lot of practice kissing. But like, it's a good point to make about by the time you're in high school, people start actually talking to you like you're an adult. Mm-hmm. And one of those things is saying, before there's a chance you can make babies, you need to be thinking about how you're going to feed those babies.
Yes.
Because it will tear you up inside if there's ever a day where you can't feed a toddler. Like, you will just die inside. And I know from doing childcare and working in the homes of some pretty poor working people where there's no food in the cabinet and the baby's crying of, like, even though it wasn't my child and I was just working, it's pretty discouraging. Even when the mom's like, you're literally just watching this so I could go grocery shopping and I will be right back with food. And we're still waiting an hour to get food to feed the kid. And they're crying. And it really is heartbreaking. So that is a legitimate conversation that wise people have with high school age people. That is a real issue to have. That's a real concern. And it's realistic to be thinking about. Financial stability matters when you're planning a future with somebody.
Love can keep you two together, mm-hmm. But love will not feed any offspring.
Right. Yeah, make bank before make babies. We Gen Xers get accused of over caring about things, but the meme that we were feral children is one of those proofs that all things seen as myth are based in facts. Yeah. The attitude of girls in my high school was have your baby before 20 so you could hit the club at 20. Oh, what? No. Also, I feel like some people really do age like milk. And some people age like fine cheese. You know what?
And it may have finally found the research to prove what's the basis for it. And it really does have to do with what your alcohol tolerance is.
Yeah, stay tuned for Tom's Digest, where he will definitely be writing about that. But anyway, back to the half of it. Tom.
We see in the half of it that essentially part of the cure for the tragedy is for the characters to go, but to live in this life is miserable. I would rather live in truth. And so that's what inspires the characters to be themselves and to change it from travesty to just drama. The other part that they go at a little bit, but like if you hear Glory talk about it, I feel is something not explored enough. Is Cyrano is also a story about anxiety and being too close to the problem to see the solution. Because to see the solutions for Cyrano, you have to take a step back. Really, you need to take, a good long walk back to be able to see all the elements at once and go, but what would really work here?
Mm-hmm.
Because as Gloria likes to talk about in her rewrite of Cyrano for modern times, we
My
can turn this
solution
story. We're
is
going to turn this story
bisexuality.
into a polycule.
Is the bisexual polyamorous bisexuality, okay? They just need to be a bisexual polycule. All the problems are solved immediately. You know what? There's even room for the Duke. I said it. Everybody, if everybody's bisexual and polyamorous, everybody gets a little piece, okay? Everybody gets some pettings. Everybody feels good. All the falsehoods of high school. Meanwhile, Spence was hoping the answer was carbs. Me too, babe. I wish it was carbs. Carbs are wonderful. Give me mashed potatoes any day. Like he says, I think Cyrano knew what he needed to do, but the voice of his fear of rejection was louder than anything else.
I mean, as I realized on Wednesday when we were talking about title possibilities,
yeah,
another story people don't realize is a Cyrano story, like using Cyrano tropes, is Back to the Future.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because Marty is Cyrano, except in this case, Marty is not interested in Roxanne. And
well, technically, he's already got Roxanne. Remember, he has Jennifer, and she is the love of his life, and she's into him.
Yes, but I mean, but the Cyrano trope story of the three-way is between Marty and his parents, and how Marty, as Cyrano, gets his, father to speak up.
Yes.
And be himself and show his truth, even if he doesn't have the words. Of essentially forcing out, to keep the tragedy from continuing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, at least it's not a paradox. Anyway, that's a whole. I'm fine. I'm fine with time travel. But yeah, that the Cyrano in Back to the Future is actually Marty's father.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it was originally solved in their time was his father was a peeping Tom who fell off of the branch in front of her father's car. And that is how they met. And then his mother was the one who essentially took that relationship the whole rest of the way. That woman did a lot of emotional work for decades.
Yes. But again, you can see where you can use tropes to make an entirely different story. And it's just useful to know these tropes of how humans act. But yeah, that thought, because like we literally have the character say, but what if she rejects me? That fear of rejection
mm-hmm.
is, in his character.
Yep.
He's so afraid of being rejected that he self-rejects himself from situations where he doesn't think he's going to be accepted.
You are describing fear of rejection accurately.
Yeah, I know.
And welcome to Bravado.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I love that this story ended up providing so many useful tropes and stories to then bounce off of and create even better stories.
Mm-hmm.
But ones that stay true. Like people still talk about Back to the Future.
Mm-hmm.
It's still an interesting story unto itself. And the characters are believable characters. Like these are the feelings people have in high school and later in life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what Cyrano was good at, was Edmond wrote out the truths of people for us all to see in ways we could all understand. And so you can just sort of crib it and put it into your own story. And it'll stay true. Hey, kitty.
Did she come in?
Yeah.
Because I can hear somebody eating the cat food in the kitchen.
Ho ho ho
The plot thickens. Spoiler, it's Little Bit or her current boyfriend. I think it's a tripod.
No, current one is that gray cat.
Well, there's Little Bit. Yes, and she's going for my bedroom. I'm so glad you closed the door. Naughty kitty, you know you're supposed to stay out. No, I saw Tripod yesterday when I left the door open.
Oh.
He was like, ma'am, do you mind? I just wanted food. And I was like, yeah, you live your life, buddy. I've already closed my bedroom door. It's fine. Yeah, he still comes around.
But yeah, like, it is a classic sort of a love triangle.
Mm-hmm.
And the emotions are honest. And that's what we want. We want those honest emotions. That's what works in The Truth About Cats and Dogs, is the emotions are true. Which, I mean, yeah, it's Janeane Garofalo, so a lot of complaining. Look, at least character-wise...
It's how she got the job in Dogma, Tom, was The Truth About Cats and Dogs.
I mean, I don't think Janeane Garofalo ever saw a character that she couldn't complain in.
Or at least she wouldn't accept it. She couldn't complain in. I couldn't tell him he had any cake. A little bit tried to play with her toys.
Ooh.
Ran when I looked at her. Yeah. She really likes the little scratch pad.
Yeah.
Bit. She likes Kitty's scratch pad that's like covered in catnip. Like, yes. This is mostly what the Kitty and Little Bit fight over, is the scratch pad. At last, drama.
But yeah, I really did.
What I liked about the half of it was at the end, we saw all three characters grow as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that they had room to grow. So, spoiler, I'm going to ruin it for you. No one ends up together. It's great.
And none of them grew for the other person. None
of them end up together because they are so young. They still need to keep doing some growing. None of them are ready for a serious long-term relationship. And so they go off. Two of them go off to college. One of them goes off to the sausage factory to grow as individuals with the promise of, I will see you again. I will see you at the break when you come back from college. I will see you then. Of like, it's not over. It's just not now, which is a very honest approach to these tropes. And that is how you avoid the tragedy, is they all need to grow and they're not done growing, but that's no reason they should stop being friends, because the bottom line is what these three characters really, the real triangle of these three characters is they like each other, or they have grown to like each other, because these are all good people. And in fact, we talked about that earlier in the show of actually, for the most part, all the characters that have more than a few lines are good characters, or they become good characters. Like, I would not say DeGeese was great, but he eventually grew better.
Yes.
He was a bit of a jerk in the beginning.
Yeah.
But he grew. And again, of like, yeah, when you're young, when you're in your 20s, you have a lot of growing to do. Nobody's done cooking in high school. Nobody. Not me, not anybody. I'm thinking of like the people I know who had the hardest lives growing up. You know, they were practically like supporting themselves and their family by the time they were 8 or 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And even those people that I knew when they were high school age, they still weren't done growing. They still weren't done cooking. Nobody is done cooking as a late teen, let alone in your early 20s. Nobody. Everybody messes up in their early 20s. That is literally the point of your 20s, is for you to try things and fail and try a different way. Like, that is the point of that time period, is you are not going to succeed, but now you need to find out what doesn't work. That's the point. And so, like, yeah, that is not necessarily where you find long-term relationships, or at least they're not cemented at that point, because you're not done growing. So it's a very honest answer when it's, no, I'm going to go off to college, and then I'll see you back in a couple years, and we'll see how we are, and we'll see if there's something between us.
Yeah. But I do like, like Megan, I do like the part where they do not grow because they need the love of the other person. They grow because they want to be better people, and the other person helps show them that they were worth it. Like, they needed a little outside validation of their own views and thoughts, because they were at this point because they couldn't accept this about themselves. Give me a sec. I need to get the kitty.
Oh, she immediately saw a little bit, and she has run. Here, let me mute Tom, so at least there won't be an echo. He has solved the drama.
It's outside.
Drama.
Poor little bit. She was just about to finally have the courage to get on the scratch bed.
Aww.
Aw, poor baby.
The fight over the scratch pad.
I mean, it's a fantastic scratch pad. Yes. It was like $7 or $8 on Amazon. It's cardboard.
Yeah.
Like a cross cut of the corrugated cardboard.
Mm-hmm.
So, oh yeah, cats love digging their claws into that.
Yeah.
And then we put catnip in, and it falls into the corrugated cardboard. And oh yeah, so what do they scratch? They get more catnip.
Yeah.
They love it. But I agree, Maggie. The biggest lesson of Cyrano was, if you don't tell the truth, you will never truly be happy.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot start a meaningful relationship when it is predicated on lies. It will never work out, because why did you lie? If you really cared about me, why would you lie to me? You okay, Tom?
Yeah. My head, though, reading Maggie's thing, all I keep hearing in my head is La Cage of Follies. And more so the birdcage and the stage play, I Am What I Am.
Oh, I was like, is it Fosse? Martha Graham. Okay.
No, just the whole number of I Am What I Am, of like, yes, you have to tell your truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was mentioning to you and Tom before the show, I think that this Cyrano de Bergerac is kind of like the beginnings of the body positivity movement. Like the main message is you have to accept yourself, warts and all, in order to like move forward in life.
And that takes courage.
You don't really hear that message that presented this in such a way that often, unless you're, getting some version of Cyrano.
You okay there, Tom?
Just capturing a cat.
I like how it blurs her eyes, like, to protect her baby. It really does. Yeah, she's not interested in me. She wants all of Tom's love. Put the harness back on.
Yeah, she can already tell. She's like, no, don't put it on.
Not the prison.
What it is she does not, it's not the harness she hates as much. It's when Tom puts her on a lead.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she is not okay with being tethered. Yeah.
I was watching that, what is it, Stardust or whatever the movie is called, the Neil Gaiman movie. Yeah. And that just reminds me of that movie, The Chain,
yes,
the Unbreakable Chain.
Yes.
But thirsty people gonna thirst.
Does that mean you're thinking about reading the book, Megan?
No, I did not enjoy the movie. I was painfully bored through most of it.
Oh no.
But I crocheted through it, so it was fine.
Well, at least you had a way to cope.
Yes. I finally finished Sean's hat. He's very excited to wear it now. Now that it fits.
He's finally has
He's like, it's only taken 6 years.
Oh.
Six years of love.
So is there anything more to say about the Cyrano de Bergerac story?
I think it is a perennial truth story. And so it's definitely one always worth...
It's about humans.
Yes. And it's one you can always rewrite to a modern setting or to any setting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's useful to know those stories.
Mm-hmm.
That if you're not sure of a story to write or how to create the drama in this, it's one of those ones you can always crib from.
So, I think part of that is because there's always something you can figure out a character thinks is holding them back, when in fact that's not what's holding them back. They are holding themselves back.
I think one random thing to take away from Cyrano is that that has nothing to do with like anything we've talked about really, is that you can have a lot of fun with your language and your words, and because there's a lot of creative wordplay in Cyrano, and he uses Edmond Rostand uses verse, like rhymes and verse, to get across some of his points. And I think you can have a lot of fun with your language that I don't see a lot of people doing necessarily nowadays, is having fun with your language and your words. And I think you can cover serious topics while using this fun wordplay like Rostand does in Cyrano. It'll make you cry, but it's still a lot of fun at the same time. Like, you can have both of those at the same time.
People don't. It's that trap a lot of writers have of taking themselves too serious, and they don't realize what that actually means is not that you don't care about the point of your story. It's that there's so many elements you can play with.
Mm-hmm.
And see if you like it or if others might like it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the joke about Charles Dickens' Christmas stories, and all of them were written in different joke forms, essentially. You know, A Christmas Carol is written entirely in the form of a carol.
Mm.
All 5 or 6 different Charles Dickens Christmas stories are written in a different form
Mm-hmm.
as a way to have fun with it.
Also, what about Christmas Says Let's Tell a Ghost Story? What? Like, how is that a thing? Or the one with the cricket on the heart? Like, why is this about a bug? What about Christmas Says Insects? I mean, there's fewer insects at Christmas because it's cold. What is this about? Yeah, like I think he just was like, what absurdity can I write today? It's Christmas. They'll eat anything up. Maggie says, I want a horror base on Cyrano where Christian and Roxanne characters get married and then she murders him because he murdered her friend Cyrano and she found out the truth. Might be a good thriller. Good times.
Again, it's a love triangle. There's so much to play with here. But yeah, of the have fun with it. You know, CyraNose nose is truly the last thing anyone cares about.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But we do all have that memorable scene where Cyrano very quickly goes over many of his favorite jokes about his nose.
Truly.
Yes, that's
The
my
lover of
favorite
birds.
scene.
Because you
Did
have
you
given
provide a
this.
I mean, and you can always bring those moments into your stories as well. Of your character, it may not be part of the story, but you can just have your character have fun with something, and it may create the most memorable scene. But yeah, don't be afraid to just have fun with it. I mean, the half of it talks way too much about sausage.
Yes.
But it gives it character. The actual story itself has its own character because this is a lot of talk about sausage and what flavors you mix in with sausage. But that is how we understand the character of Christian in this story, is through his interest in sausage. He's not the smartest person. His family makes sausages, but he has an interest and he has his own creativity. He's found a way to express it, but it is a way that it is not acceptable to others.
I think also it's good, like writers could take away that every one of your characters that has lines in your story should also have an insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
And an insecurity is a lie they believe. So what is a lie they believe about themselves?
Mm-hmm.
What is each of your characters' insecurity? Some characters even can have multiple insecurities. Case in point, millennials. So like think about that of don't just talk about what your character's favorite cereal is and what are their motivations, but also what are their insecurities. Everybody has something and they usually got it from their family. Everybody has something. And so honestly with writers, as we talk about writing as therapy, think about as a writer, what are your own insecurities, particularly the ones you receive from your family? You
actually reminded me of an insecurity. I have actually knew someone with this one, and this sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it was at the level as a real insecurity. They only ate this one particular breakfast cereal, and like they would refuse to eat any other breakfast cereal. They refuse, in any form at anyone else's house. Like they would bring their own cereal a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked them once, late at night, okay, but what's up with the cereal? Is there like some nutrient you have to get, and this is what you do instead of taking meds? What is up
with the cereal?
And they told me, and it was a true insecurity. They were actually afraid because this is cereal they'd enjoyed when they were little, that if they had any other cereals, they wouldn't like this one as much. And they would lose their joy they get eating this cereal. so they refused to eat any others. Just for the fear of losing the joy they currently had, because they didn't have a lot of foods they enjoyed. And what if they find another cereal they really enjoy, but they can't really get access to it? Then they'll just always eat the cereal knowing it could be better. But that is what insecurity really looks like in someone, is this real fear that the smallest change in the status quo would drastically ruin their lives, even though you know, as the writer, as the exterior, this will not. But they're sure, but that character is sure of it.
Let me just turn on my camera for a second so you can see the puppy.
Oh, being cute and adorable.
She's like, it's almost dinner time. I'm hungry.
Maggie says being unable to drive a stick shift or parallel park shouldn't be a millennial insecurity. It should be accepted as systemic lack of education.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you haven't been taught how to do something. My mother used to tell me that I only got snarls because I was a naughty girl. So every time I get hair snarls, I feel ashamed that I have not been good. It is ridiculous. My mother is dead. Nobody is worried whether I'm a good or a bad girl anymore. And yet, I still feel an absolute overwhelming sense of shame every time I find a snarl. When in fact, what my snarls actually come from is when my health isn't so good, the nature of my hair oils thickens and becomes very waxy, and then I get a snarl from that, from one sebaceous gland kind of changing in its makeup.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes from just, being normal hair oil to this waxy thing that then all the other hairs and some dust get stuck in, and then there's a snarl. And so I definitely have an insecurity about it. And also, my snarls have nothing to do with my moral or immoral behavior. And yet, I'm a grown-ass woman. And I still feel ashamed whenever I have a snarl. And I'm afraid if anyone sees my snarl, they'll know. Nobody thinks my snarls are immoral or caused by immoral behavior. Not even my hairdressers. So that is one of my insecurities. I have many. But that is one of them. We can have insecurities about all sorts of weird things. And again, it's a lie that character believes about themselves. And more than likely, they picked it up when they were too young to recognize it as a lie. So usually under the age of 10. Because normally middle schoolers are kind of savvy about lies. I mean, in theory.
Mm-hmm.
They're still a little bit gullible, but they're not as gullible as elementary school age and younger. And if they're, say, under 5, they usually they're not going to remember it. So really, where you pick up an insecurity is between the ages of 5 and 10. That is traditionally where ridiculous insecurities come from, or very obviously not true insecurities come from. When people think, no, I'm too ugly to ever get married and have children, that somebody convinced them that when they were between the ages of 5 and 10. And that was literally what I was taught in the education program in child and adolescent psychology, was this is the time period when you can really mess up children. So be careful what you say around them, particularly about their body or anything that essentially they can't change about themselves, like their feet size or their height or, anything about their appearance, they cannot change. You can't change. I mean, technically, I guess you can change your hair color now, although it is work. And you can kind of change your skin tone. like, because there's lightening creams, and in theory you can tan. I cannot tan. It turns out, like, literally I've been diagnosed as untannable, which that's weird. Also, why are doctors that way? But anyway, like, so, but in theory you can also change your skin tone, and you can now wear contacts to change your eye color. But like, I knew somebody who had an insecurity that they have brown eyes. They still have brown eyes, but they were told when they were like 7 that having brown eyes means you're full of shit. And that so people who don't have brown eyes are not liars. And so they have brown eyes, and they grew up believing everybody with brown eyes was a liar. And they are now adults, and they are very insecure that everybody thinks they're a liar all the time. And also they don't trust anyone with brown eyes. And that is wild.
I don't know. My favorite one I've seen of late for the millennials of the look, if you're going back to, if the kids are going to talk wistfully about the 90s, commit of go over pluck your eyebrows.
No, not that dumb.
Because remember at the time, it was people with bushy eyebrows were unkept heathens.
Yes, I do remember that.
Everything must be highly trimmed, or, you know, you are someone who doesn't care about yourself. And, you know, obviously you must smell if your eyebrows are bushy.
I remember that. You must smell if you have bushy eyebrows.
You know, this is nothing of the truth.
I knew people that kept eyebrow clippers in their purse, and at the mall would go to the bathroom just to check their eyebrows and clip it. Literally clip their eyebrow hair.
Mm-hmm.
Right there at the mall. Why? Just in case we meet somebody, I want them to know that I'm like hygienic. Like, yeah. So, but really every character needs to have one or more just like glaringly obvious insecurities that, like, why would anyone think that? That is weird. And it's everybody picks them up between the ages of 5 and 10. Some people pick them up older, but everybody's got some that they picked up between the ages of 5 and 10. Everybody. Mm-hmm. I know people who picked up some weird insecurities. This one is more racist. Of if you hang around people of darker skin tone, it'll rub off on you. And like, you wouldn't want that because then your family rejects you. And like, so, and this was, let's see, I was 9 or 10 when I heard this from one of the girls I was hanging out with. And she explained, that's why I'm friends with you. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? And she's like, yeah, I'm hoping it will help with my tan skin. And I'm like, ma'am, no. And yeah, like, so she really wasn't into me, but she was hoping that my paleness would rub off on her. So her family would like her more because her family had explained she was the darkest member of her family. Wow. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So
many things to unpack there.
I had to explain to her, like, I was at the time when I was 9, I was in an otherwise all black Girl Scout troop. There were 28 other girls. I was the 29th. And I had to explain to her, I hang out with them all the time and they don't, I mean, look how pale I am. It's terrible. I can't tan. So if that were true, I would finally be able to tan. It's not accurate. And also, people shouldn't like you or dislike you based on your skin tone. They should like or dislike you based on your character and how nice you are to them. Look, in my defense, I was 9. I'm not saying I was like a real deep kid. But like, that was what I explained to her. And she had a lot to think about. I guess it's the 80s. If your hair didn't have enough hairspray to combust, then you were a lesbian. However, the lesbians I knew had the biggest hair of all of them after the pageant girls. Yes. Yeah, that checks.
Maggie, please tell me at some point you have managed to watch The Final Girls. You need to watch this if you
You're going to have to get Maggie a copy.
Because they go over this.
Yes, she's so sad. Her hair's so flat. She must be a sad person. Um, it was believed in the 80s that if you had flat hair, you were a sad person, versus if you had fluffy hair, you were a happy person.
What?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Again, people making weird moral judgments and other kinds of judgments about people based on outward appearance that they don't necessarily have a lot of control over. You know, including humidity. Like, you just don't have control.
Oh, you should see how, like, ridiculously curly the little tiny flyaways in my hair are. Like, so much frizz.
A horror farce, right? Not the one about the girl who had been trained to go kill serial killers, right? Because that's the final girl.
Yeah, the final girl is different from Final Girl. So anyway, so be thinking about what are your character's insecurities, and believe me when I tell you, there is no insecurity too ridiculous for a character. There, like, again, I want you to think about that girl who thought that if she hung around people of darker skin tones, it would rub off on her. Like, there is no insecurity you as a writer can come up with that is going to be more outrageous than real insecurities real people have.
And you can tell the half of it was written by an Asian American woman, because there is a scene in there based purely on an insecurity I know she had developed as a child, where the main character has to play the piano in public, and the piano has been messed up and mistuned so that it keeps breaking the chords.
Oh man.
Of like, that is absolutely an Asian American girl insecurity, fear of someday I'm going to have to play the piano and the piano's going to be wrong, so I sound like I don't know what I'm doing.
I can think of 5 Asian American girls off the top of my head that I grew up with that literally had this nightmare fear because they would wake up in a sweat from nightmares about this happening, that they're at a recital and the piano is all out of tune or the chords have been cut. Like, I can think of 5 of my friends off the top of my head from childhood that, like, literally would wake up and then wake me up. I had that terrible nightmare again. Assure me that all pianos are in tune, okay? Like, yes. Or, you know, and then we'd have to, like, go to the phone book and look up piano tuners in the yellow book. And like, note all the different ones in the phone book. So, like, see, we can call all of them. Someone will be available if it's out of like, I am not joking. I had one friend, well, technically 2. They were twins. And every time I slept over, one of them would wake me up with this nightmare. And, like, I would have to assure them it'll be all right. And then, like, yeah, I would have to open up the phone book and, like, point out the 8 different piano tuners and their hour and just read to them from the phone book till they fell back asleep of it'll be okay. We'll be able to find a piano tuner. I am not kidding, y'all. It was wild. The 80s were weird. The 80s and 90s were a weird time to be alive, let alone an American.
But again, also showing with perspective, and all writing is therapy. We see, you know, Alice work through these problems by having the character face this situation and then do something else to show their competency. It's not the end of the world.
And people won't hate you.
And in fact, this very situation then has everyone in the school like her. Because they see her other talents. They actually appreciate her even more than the talent she was required to have by her parents.
Right. So again, start thinking, if you haven't already, start thinking about giving your characters 1 or more insecurities. You don't have to have these insecurities come up in the story, but I think they will definitely inform your characters and give them depth. But, like, what makes the Cyrano de Bergerac story really work is that we become familiar with various characters' insecurities. And if anything, we like these characters even more. So it is definitely time to be thinking about giving your character multiple insecurities so that readers can fall in love with your characters more and become more attached, more strongly attached. And I think this, in this case, the more ridiculous the insecurity, the better. Because in reality, people have ridiculous insecurities.
That's the nature of insecurities. They're ridiculous in general.
Like, no, I felt nobody wants to hear that their personal insecurities are ridiculous. But I feel like if they think that, oh no, but my insecurities aren't ridiculous, then you haven't really given a lot of perspective to how to your insecurities, because they're ridiculous. Whether it's if I try another cereal, I'll fall in love with a different cereal and I won't love my original cereal as much. Or if anyone knows I have a snarl, they'll think less of me as a person. Or that if I sit close to darker skinned people, it will rub off on me. Whatever it is, that is ridiculous. And someone else had to convince you of this. Nobody came up with this on their own. Other people, adults usually, had to convince you of whatever it is.
Ooh. So
Another one of
basically
Maggie.
Poisoned Maggie.
Maggie, have you watched The Great North?
There's a new episode out about competitions and children.
And poisonings.
So I think, like, ultimately for me, I've definitely taken away both becoming more familiar with the Cyrano de Bergerac tropes, the accurate tropes, versus how they're adapted and how they really tell on the adapters.
Mm-hmm.
As well as that characters need more insecurities. You're not done building a character if they don't have one or more ridiculous insecurities.
I like that Cyrano is aware of his problem, but it turns out to not actually be the real problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a good something that you can use. You can have your character think that they are aware of their flaws and what is wrong and whatnot, but have the problem be something else about them that they are just too close to it to see, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a valuable tool that you can use in such a variety of situations that will add depth to your story.
Like, the character's aware of their insecurities, but they're not aware of their fatal flaw.
Exactly, yeah.
And they think that their real problem are their insecurities, when in fact, no, that is not their fatal flaw.
Mm-hmm.
Your fatal flaw is you're convinced you're unlovable. And it's going to lead you into some really dark alleys.
Yep.
I mean, and like the half of it does use that one. Of we see that the main Cyrano character is convinced, like, oh, it's because she's Asian. That's why she's alienated from everyone else. Versus we see, no, it's because she doesn't socialize with anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
That they act that way towards her because they just don't know her. Once they get a chance to socialize, they're like, hey, join us. You know, they don't really have any prejudice against her. She was just convinced of it, though.
Except they do call her the Chinese kid, which cringe.
Yes.
I don't really like that part. Just a quick, as we wrap up, just a quick thing. Did you know that the links are down below? If you don't already know how amazing Megan is.
Oh, thank you.
Link down below. Ditto for Tom. Also, if only I could find things when I'm looking for them. Nope, that's not the right one. I'm gonna have to move these things around so they're actually where I need them to be.
So what are we talking about next week?
There it is. I'm moving it up. I'm gonna move them up. I'm moving it up. I'm moving Rant Stick down. All right, next week. We, at the request of Spence, you remember Spence, we are going to talk about Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks is ouvert. The whole Mel Brooks, a love letter to Melvin Kaminsky.
A man who set out and, for the most part, succeeded at only ever directing one movie in any particular genre type. That was his real goal, and that is what helped him decide what movies to make.
Yep.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That is the real reason why he never planned to actually make History of the World Part 2, like it was a joke.
It was a joke.
And yeah, it took his son to go, come on. And then finally, because it was always no, he would only do one of everything. But he wanted to do one of everything and see what it was like.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about Mel Brooks. So bring out your Young Frankenstein. Bring out your Blazing Saddles. Your High Anxiety. Your History of the World Part 1 and Part 2. Your Robin Hood Men in Tights. Dracula Dead and Loving It. We're going to talk about it all and what we as writers can learn from it. And there is a lot. Yes, we're going to talk about the producers. Original name, yes, Spaceballs. Original name, Springtime for Hitler. People look at me funny when I quote the lyrics from Springtime for Hitler online, as if somehow they have never listened to the lyrics before. Mel Brooks managed to offend everyone in such a way they couldn't stay offended or they would look like the asshole. Agreed. So we're going to deep dive. And of course, this is our love letter to Mel Brooks, whom we adore. True story. Tom and I figured out we were Jewish after watching Blazing Saddles as teenagers. Our local public library had gotten a VHS copy of it. And we rented it from the library and we watched it at home. And we were like, we love this humor. What is this humor? This is our humor. We've never seen our humor before in a movie. And Dad goes, it's Jewish humor. And then he goes, Patty. And Mom's like, what? And we were like, do we have Jewish humor? Dad's like, oh, yeah, you definitely have Jewish humor. Why does no one else have Jewish humor? Because most of the people are not Jews. You know about Jews, right, Gloria? It's like, yes, I vaguely remember. Yes. It's like, well, Jewish humor.
I definitely identify with Jewish humor because it's so similar to like the humor of my Italian grandmother, especially the kind of like martyrdom that is sometimes present in Jewish humor and my grandmother's particular brand of Italian Catholic humor.
So Jewish humor is the humor of the oppressed.
Mm.
If you've ever been oppressed for thousands of years, Jewish humor is how you cope with oppression and still keep going.
Mm.
Jewish humor is about moving forward, but acknowledging the truth of this sucks. This sucks a lot. And I'm not going to blind myself to the truth, but it definitely sucks. I'm going to acknowledge it, and I'm going to then move forward.
And I'm going to laugh at it to show it does not have power over me.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the other key part, is the reason why it's humor versus just rage is because humor shows its lack of power and control over you.
Mm.
And that is why you have to learn to laugh at it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. We're going to talk about that. And then the next week, we're going to talk about Gene Wilder. Again, another love letter. Gene Wilder was Mel Brooks' muse. He's literally talked about it in some of the documentaries of Gene Wilder inspired Mel Brooks to reach further, to try harder, to really push the envelope. And so we're going to talk about Gene Wilder, who is a director or was a director in his own right, but also did inspire Mel Brooks. He wrote with Mel Brooks. And they really workshopped a lot of stuff. So to talk about Mel Brooks without talking about Gene Wilder seems silly. To talk about Gene Wilder without talking about Mel Brooks seems silly. So we're going to talk about both. We're going to talk about Mel Brooks next week and Gene Wilder the week after that. We hope everybody will come and join us. It's going to be a wild time. It's going to be fun. So thank you all so much for coming. I shall wave you all off into the sunset.
Bye.
And we will go meet in the Discord if anyone would like to join us there at Unicorn Council. Join us in the Unicorn Council voice chat. We're going to be in the Clubhouse. It is literally called the Clubhouse. If you don't have a link to our Discord, if you go down below and you click on my link tree, there is a Discord invite in there. We'd love to have you join us. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.